You're listening to From the Chair, and I'm your host, Mike Hamilton. Join us each episode as we talk to athletic directors from across America. We're going to talk about topics like leadership, career development, issues of the day, and I can promise you we're going to have some fun along the way too. So sit back, listen in, and let's dive in. Let's go. All right, welcome to today's episode. Happy to have with me today the North Dakota State University Director of Athletics, Matt Larsen. Matt, thanks for joining me.
Mike, it's great to be on with you. I appreciate you having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. You and I met in Indianapolis and kind of just chatted a few weeks ago about a lot of different things, not related to the podcast, just great conversation. But in the course of that, I felt like there was some conversation that it would be great to share with our listeners and just resulting from all the success that you've had at North Dakota State, your program has had there, particularly coming off yet another football championship. So wanted to dive in on some of that if we could and talk about just the culture and what's happening there in Fargo if we can. So first of all, let me congratulate you on yet another national championship in football.
Well, I appreciate it. I've been fortunate in my 8 years here at North Dakota State. That was our sixth trip to the FCS National Championship. And this one definitely felt a little different for me, especially given, one, we weren't able to go in the spring when FCS football had their championship in the spring, made it to the quarterfinals and was eliminated. But I think more so just given all the challenges, that we all in college athletics and society have dealt with over the course of the last 18 months to 2 years with the pandemic and COVID and all the challenges that's presented. This one felt a little more special, just knowing all the things that our guys have done to overcome a lot of adversity, a lot of hurdles presented to them in the last 2 years. This one felt just a little sweeter than the other five.
I had not planned on talking about this, but I think it's an interesting question coming out of playing in the spring and the number of games that you had there and then popping into the fall. What did you learn lessons from that? I mean, was that too much activity for the student athletes? Was it too hard on the staff? What administratively, I'd be interested in your learnings because that's never happened before and perhaps will never happen again. We hope never happen again, but any specific things that you guys took from that experience of playing that many games in such a short period of time that's informative?
Well, you're right. Definitely hope it's something that we never have to do again. And we were in the locker room in Frisco, Texas, after we won the championship, talking about what a long year it had been and how many games we had played, how many practices, how long the team had been together for the last year. And, it was definitely a challenge. But I think one of the things, and I give our coaching staff and our student athletes a ton of credit, I think one of the things they realized from day one was that this was going to be a long year. We were going to have a lot of games. And what were some of the things that we could do different from maybe a typical year in terms of length of practice, amount of contact in practice, just some of those things to understand that, hey, we're going to play a lot of games. Let's try to give our guys as much more mental reps than physical reps, knowing that their body's going to take, a beating over the course of the next year or so. And so those are some of the things that I think our coaching staff, even you going back into last spring, which I think they were able to kind of pull back on some of the things we were doing, particularly on the field maybe, and more classroom, more meeting, more video coaching, I think, than anything else. And then we brought that into this year. I think the summer was a little different too. Probably didn't work our guys as hard during the summer. Most of them were here throughout the summer months. And then as we went into this year, I think same thing, knowing that we had just played, so many games in the spring, trying to make sure with the hopes of making a run this fall to a national championship, knowing it was going to be, 16 games, 15 games, that we were also making sure that we were scaling back some of those practices and trying to, give their bodies rest as much as we could, knowing that we were still trying to prepare to compete every Saturday.
Yeah. So you came in 2014. You mentioned that you guys have won 6 of 8 since you've been there. And I think it's 9 of 11 now, if I remember, when you go back a little bit further. And one of the things that you and I discussed, and in fact, we had Gene Taylor on this podcast earlier this year, where he talked about moving into Fargo, and at a time where the transition was starting to occur from Division II to Division I, and you could do the math pretty quickly and see that not only the move from D2 to D1, there really wasn't much of a a gap there in terms of success. You guys had historical success prior to the move, and then immediately fell into this pattern of success since the move. And one of the things I'm always interested in is just transition dynamics, culture, leadership. How do you maintain a winning tradition? And so now you've gone through a couple of different athletic directors. Obviously, you've made some football coaches have come and gone. Luckily, not many, and they've had opportunities to go on to other places. But yet you've made this championship consistency. What's the story? Why have you guys been able to maintain that level of consistency at North Dakota State?
Well, Fargo is a really, really special place, and you look at the history of NDSU in particular football. We've had 3 losing seasons in the last 70 years, and Mike, you've been in college athletics for a long time. That's really, really hard to do, and so absolutely. And you think of, even over that span of 7 years, how many coaches, how many ADs, student athletes that have come through the program. But there's certain things that I think that have remained very consistent with our program. You talk about culture. Culture is probably an overused word, I think, in our industry today. But when I look at some things in terms of how we've been able to maintain that level of success with change over the course of the years, I think a couple things stand out. And in all my years, I've been in college athletics for 25 years, and I can say that the locker room, our football locker room, is the most unselfish locker room I've ever been around at any level. And why is that important? It's important because guys don't come here to pad their stats. We don't have a lot of national award winners, but we win a lot of football games. And at the end of the day, for our guys, it's not about how many carries, how many yards they pass for, how many tackles, how many sacks. It's about, are we winning football games and are we competing for national championships? And so that seems really obvious, but that's harder said than done. The other thing that I think that is stood the test of time within our program, and I think when you look at a lot of championship level programs at any level, I think this holds true, is we very much have a player-led program, and our players establish the culture. Our players enforce the culture. Obviously, our coaches, administration, we're there to provide leadership and support in those things. But at the end of the day, we entrust our players. They're responsible for the locker room. They're responsible for the culture. And, you have our freshmen that come in right off the bat. They very quickly are aware and understand what it means to be a Bison, the way we conduct ourselves on and off the field, what the level of expectations are in terms of effort, accountability, learning, whatever it might be. And so our players do an unbelievable job of enforcing that. And I think players very often or very quickly understand, I'm going to conform to the way they do it at NDSU, or I'm probably not going to be there for very long. And so every single person from 5th year senior to true freshman understands what that level of expectation is. When you have them all coming together, some really good things can happen. So I think those are 2 things I think right off the bat that have stood the test of time. And, it's our job as administration and to make sure. When I came here, we had such a long history and tradition of success. And so how do you continue to improve and get better what we do here, but make sure those critical pieces don't get upset? And so we've done some things, whether it's, cost of attendance for all of our scholarship student athletes. We've continued to expand facilities and those things, but making sure that really precious piece, that culture, that locker room piece, that doesn't go unchanged.
Yeah. So as it relates to portal questions, it's an interesting dynamic at North Dakota State because I assume you very rarely have anybody on the way out. So that then probably also doesn't provide a lot of opportunity on the way in. Have you seen much activity at all in that regard?
We haven't, and we've always said we're very much a developmental program. Traditionally and historically, we haven't had a lot of transfers, even before the transfer portal come through North Dakota State. And so we very much believe in recruit you out of high school as a freshman, and we're going to develop you here over the course of your 4 or 5 years as a Bison. I would say over the course of the last couple of years, we've had a few players that have entered the portal, but nowhere near, I think, the numbers that other programs have seen. And I think there's a couple reasons why. I think players that come here, one, you have an opportunity every year to compete for a national championship. And, I can probably count maybe on one or two hands how many programs can say that. And so I think that resonates with high school and college football players. Again, whether you're talking FBS or FCS, competing for a national championship is really, really important. The other thing too is I think we've illustrated over the course of at least the last decade that you can come to North Dakota State, have a great career, and you have an opportunity to go and play at the next level. Every single NFL team comes to our practices, our preseason games throughout the course of the year. So you're going to have an opportunity to be seen by every single NFL team, probably I would say at least half a dozen times throughout the course of the year. Again, how many programs can say that over the course of the season? And so I think those things really resonate. The other piece I would say too is it's a really special place. The history and the tradition. We do a great job of bringing former players back, whether it's from the 60s or 1965 was our first national championship, or bringing somebody back from the 80s or 90s when we won national championships. And they talk about how special the program is. They talk about the brotherhood. And our current players see that. And the nice thing is in the rare occasion where we do have people transfer into our program, instantly they talk about how different North Dakota State is compared to whatever institution or institutions they've come from in terms of the level of coaching, the brotherhood, the locker room, the resources, all of those things I think combined together make it so people want to stay here and compete for the Bison.
Yeah. We'll stay on the football theme for just a couple more minutes here. So you, one of the things we talked about when we were together in Indianapolis was this, the Bison tracker and the migration of the Bison to Frisco, right? And certainly you've got incredible fan support. I think if my numbers are correct, you're something like 29-1 in home playoff games hosted, maybe 29-30-1, whatever. Great support, great history there. Your fans do travel. They make their reservations early for Frisco every year, anticipating that. They come in droves to Texas. Tell the group, the folks who are listening, just a little bit about the Bison Tracker real quickly. I think it's kind of a neat idea.
Yeah, well, you hit on it, Mike. Our fan base, I always say pound for pound, we have one of the best fan bases, if not the best in the country. They support us in so many levels, whether it's season tickets, philanthropically, traveling is really special. And so, one of our first trips down to Frisco to the national championship, and you never know how your fan base is going to travel to something like that. But, I know competing for national championships is really special to our fan base. And so we have an NDSU alum who is also a software engineer, and he developed it's called the Bison Tracker. And basically what it does, it's through analytics and using your phone, and it's way over my head. So I'll talk at a very low level here. But basically what it does is it tracks the migration of our fan base from wherever they're coming from to Frisco, Texas. And it's really neat to see over the course of the week leading up to the national championship game, where people are coming from. And it truly is a migration, particularly down I-29 from Fargo down to Frisco. But I think just about all 50 states, we have some international, some foreign countries that are represented by people who are Bison fans or part of Bison Nation who are making their way to the national championship game. And so there's been years where it's been upwards of 20,000 people have logged in to track their migration from their home down to Frisco, Texas for the national championship. And the reason why that number is really interesting because Toyota Stadium only holds about 20,000. We've been very fortunate. We've always had probably somewhere between 65 and 70% of the fans. So that means a lot of fans, or probably 3,000 or 4,000 fans, are making their way to Frisco, don't have tickets, but want to be down there for the celebration, for the couple of days leading up to the national championship game. So again, we're really fortunate, incredibly passionate and supportive fan base that we have.
Yeah. So with all the success that you had, and with the success with the way your fans travel, I know that scheduling is not easy for you because it's for FBS schools. The idea of playing North Dakota State with the success you've had and the abilities that your student athletes have, it's a difficult decision for an FBS team to schedule. However, that being said, it's also an opportunity to have incredible scene of fans visiting and so forth. And you and I have talked a little bit about neutral site games. You've talked about the difficulty of scheduling. If you would, what's your scheduling philosophy now based upon how you're viewed in the marketplace as being a very difficult opponent?
No, that's a great question, and it's something that's probably one of the hardest things that we do is football scheduling. Philosophically, as an FCS program, we get to play 11 games for the most part every year. There are some games where you get a 12th game, but philosophically for us, we're always going to have 6 home games. From a revenue generation, from a fan engagement standpoint, 6 home games is really important. And then you have your 4 other non-conference games, or excuse me, conference games that would be on the road. So it leaves you really with 1 game to play with, essentially. And so typically in a perfect world, we'd love to have it be an FBS game. Our last FBS opponent was in 2016 when we played Iowa. We're fortunate, went down there, had a great contingent of Bison fans who made it down there and ended up winning on a kind of a walk-off field goal to beat Iowa in Kinnick Stadium, which was an unbelievable atmosphere. But as you mentioned, it's made scheduling those games really, really difficult. Our next FBS game is actually this upcoming season, 22. We travel down to Arizona and play Arizona down in Tucson. So, but that's a 6-year gap between playing FBS games. So we've tried to do some things creatively just to engage our fan base, look at some destinations. In 2019, we played at Target Field, which is the home of the Minnesota Twins, had 34,000 Bison fans down there for that game. We have a huge alumni and a huge recruiting base down in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis. So that was a great destination for us. In 2023, we're actually going to go back down to Minneapolis. We're going to play at US Bank Stadium where the Minnesota Vikings play. We're going to play Eastern Washington there, and we anticipate we're gonna have a great crowd. But looking at those different things, we're in talks about trying to have a neutral site game in Las Vegas. We've had people approach us about having games down in Frisco, Texas, or in the Dallas Plano area. Again, things that we can look to do in lieu of having an FBS game. What are some experience type things that we can do for our fan base to be able to travel in lieu of FBS games? We've also done some home and homes with some CAA schools. We've been out to Maryland to play Towson. We played Delaware a couple of years ago. Again, just different destinations that we don't typically get to travel to try to give our fan base and our student athletes that kind of experience.
Well, maybe we can get you to Nashville at some point in the future. That'd be awesome. Hey, so you've got some really good facilities. Your baseball park, your athletic center, your arena. You are, I know, very proud of a new building that's in progress here. That's your new football performance center. First of all, congratulations. I know the university just received the largest one-time gift in your athletic history, $15 million towards that facility. And tell us a little bit about the new, is it the Nodak Performance Center? Is that the name?
It is. It's the Nodak Insurance Company Football Performance Complex. And it's actually, I look out my window, we are under construction as we speak. Steel is going to start to go up here in the next couple of weeks, but it's a $50 million facility. And here at North Dakota State, we have to fundraise for all of our athletic facilities. And, it goes back to the fan base we talked about and just how incredibly supportive they are. In our climate, we need a year-round facility for our student athletes to compete. And we've had a bubble over an outdoor field here for the last 8 years, but it can get pretty chilly up here in Fargo, and basically trying to heat a tent essentially with a bubble. And so it served us really well, but it really showed that we needed a more permanent climate controlled indoor facility. And so it's going to be one of the best in the country when it's all said and done. And it'll have an outdoor field that'll be fully lit. It'll have the full football field indoor facility. We'll have some doors that'll open up so you can transition back and forth between the indoor and outdoor field when the weather's nice. But the indoor facility, it's a full-size football field, but it'll also allow all of our other outdoor sports to be able to train in there in a great way. Baseball, softball, soccer, both of our golf programs will be able to utilize that facility as they train during the winter months. And then the gift that you mentioned, we had a $15 million gift from an NDSU alum for what we call phase 2, which will move forward as well now, is our West Operations building will be a new weight room, athletic training room, recruiting area, locker room, equipment room, and some meeting rooms. And so something that's really needed in a lot of ways for us. but it's going to be an unbelievable facility. Probably sometime next September, October, we'll move in there just in time for that pending winter. So great recruiting tool, but also an unbelievable facility for us to be able to train and develop not just our football program, but all of our student athletes as we move forward.
Yeah. So as we review the outcomes of the NCAA Constitution Committee and look to the future now of what Division I athletics, and for purposes of this conversation, what Division I athletics might look like going forward, and I know that there's a lot got to happen to see what the next steps are here. But as you sit in an interesting place, highly successful in the FCS, potentially contemplating an FBS move at some point, and knowing now that there is some churn in the water related to what might be next in Division I in and of itself. How do you look to the next, let's call it next 6 to 12 to 18 months in terms of the things that you're looking for to help determine what you want to do strategically for your athletic program in the next 2 or 3 years?
Well, you're right. I mean, I've been in college athletics for 25 years, and this is definitely the most tumultuous time, or whatever the right adjective is to describe it. And I think, last week or 2 weeks ago in Indy was kind of just the start. It was really important for us to ratify the new constitution that allowed this transformational committee to kind of reform what Division I is going to look like. And I think if anybody had a crystal ball and would try to say what's this going to look like 6 to 8 months from now, if anybody figured that out, boy, they'd be really, really smart. And so I would say philosophically, what we've always tried to do here at NDSU and have always been in alignment with our president is we want to continue to invest so we have opportunities and to be able to make the best decision for North Dakota State. And so, for the last number of years, when you go back 15 years ago, that was to transition from Division II to Division I. And that's served us really well, and we've invested and we've had great success. And so as we look at the next 6 to 8 months, again, our job, or my job, is to make sure we're positioned that wherever Division I lands, because being Division I institution is critically important to us, wherever Division I lands, that we're best positioned to have some opportunities. And so whether that's FBS football, and who knows what FBS football is going to look like here, 8 months from now, is, I've heard, does the Power Five, do they do something different? Is there a Group of Five national championship? What does that look like? What's that mean for FCS? And so, I think philosophically, we're never going to have the budget of 200 and some odd million like some of those higher end FBS programs are. But that next group of FBS and the top level of FCS, that's kind of where we see ourselves. And so once, we have a better idea of what college football is going to look like, again, as long as we're positioned from a facility, operation, support, fan base, those things, I think we're in a great position to make decisions that are going to be best for us as we head into these next 25, 30 years of Division I athletics.
Yeah. You've got that banner behind you, 28 national championships. And I've talked a lot about football, which is, obviously we know why, right? Because of the success in football. I want to give you a chance just for a second to brag on, some good things that are happening outside of your football program at North Dakota State. Maybe a team that's really performing well this particular season, a student athlete that we all need to keep an eye on, maybe somebody that's even going to be in the Beijing Olympics or whatever, So I'm curious, give us some insight into your more broad-based program at North Dakota State.
Oh, thanks. And I actually have to update that. It's 29 now, so I'm a little bit behind. I gotta get that updated after the most recent one. But no, and I would say that's, we have a long history and tradition of success here across a lot of sports. Again, 29 national championships, 17 of those are in football, 12 are across 5 other sports: women's basketball, softball, wrestling, cross country, and track. And so programs, again, just very deep history. And a lot of people think of North Dakota State as a football school, but very successful, broad-based program across all the sports that we offer. And, it's the one sport that I think always catches people by surprise when you say we've had great success is the sport of softball. Here we are in Fargo, North Dakota, and for the first, 2 to 3 months of the season, our team's on the road. And, we've been to 11 of the last 12 NCAA tournaments, have been to a super regional. And so that success. And again, our coach does an unbelievable job. He's from Fargo, recruits young women from predominantly from the state of California to come all the way up north here to play softball at a really high level, to the point where the level of success has led to, we did about a $4 million renovation to their softball stadium. It's one of the nicer ones in the country. And they have an unbelievable amount of success. The other program that I would talk is our both our track programs. Our women's track program has won 24 straight conference championships between indoor and outdoor, and our men are between 18 of those 24. We've had a number of Olympians. This most recent Olympics, Peyton Otterdahl, who is an NCAA national championship in the indoor shot put, set the NCAA record, competed in the Olympics this past summer, and continues to throw at a professional level. So really proud of all the things our student athletes are able to accomplish. And, the one thing I'm probably most proud of is, this past semester we had a 3.4 cumulative student athlete GPA. And so not only are they doing unbelievable things on the court, the mat, and the track, but incredible things in the classroom as well too. And so just incredibly and extremely proud of all that they're able to do throughout the year.
Really appreciate you sharing about that. That's great info. Great success too, man. So as you look forward to the next 6 or so months outside of this Constitution review, outside of recovery from the pandemic, NIL portal, whatever, is there something else, as if that weren't enough, by the way, let's talk about at the more granular level on your campus, the things that you feel like, hey, you know what, as a leader, now that I've been here 8 years, an area that you feel like you've got personal focus towards related to your time as athletic director at North Dakota State?
Well, I think there's two things. One, and this is a critical time here at NDSU for us, is we're actually going through a presidential search. So for the last week and this week, we have 5 candidates that are coming to campus and interviewing, and we're going to make a selection probably sometime the end of February. And so anytime there's a change in leadership at the highest level, that's critical for me and our staff and our student athletes to educate that person on the importance of athletics here at NDSU. That relationship with the president and myself and our department is really, really important. The good thing is all the candidates we've met with so far, I think, understand and appreciate the place that college athletics plays on a campus, in particular here at NDSU, and how important our athletics program is on campus, in the community, and across the state. So, that's critically important. And then the second thing I would say is, and this is something, and Mike, I know you can appreciate this, having sat in the chair, is we're here for our student athletes. And so my goal every year is to try to build as many relationships or new relationships with our student athletes as I can, because at the end of the day, we're here to serve them. And if there are things that they need or we can be doing better to better their experience here while they're at NDSU, then ultimately that's our job. And so that's something that I always look to do every year, is how can I continue to build those relationships and strengthen those relationships with our student athletes. So I make sure that this department is representative of them and the things that they need and the things that they want.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to put your sales hat on for just a second. I think I maybe share with you that North Dakota was a state that I had not been to previously before last year. And sadly so. But I made it, right? And came to Fargo, a lovely city. And I know for, all of my sort of being there for a day or so, that it's the city that's really on the move and looked to as a place where people want to move to, that kind of thing. And some folks will say, well, it's really cold. And I'm not going to ask you what the temperature is today. It doesn't matter, right? But obviously there's the success of your university and all that surrounds that. But for those who haven't been to Fargo or been to your campus before, maybe give a glimpse to how Fargo is different and why it's a great place to live and to work.
Well, and I'll preface it with, for those who don't know, I've spent most of my life in New York. Was born in New York. Most of my professional career took place in New York, and so I'm an upper Midwest transplant, and I came out here 7.5 years ago with my wife and my 3 kids, and it's home now. There's no doubt about it. And the things I think people don't realize when they hear Fargo, they instantly think cold. And what I would say is it's one of the fastest growing communities in the upper Midwest. It's about 250,000 people. But more so, and the things that I always tell recruits and employees when we're looking to hire them is that what you do here at North Dakota State matters. You know, there's a lot of Division I athletic programs across the country, and I know this here. If we win or we lose, it matters. If our student athletes do well in the classroom, in the community, it matters. And that's not the case everywhere. You win or lose, some people don't care. Here they care, and they invest in a really high level. And because of that, we have really high expectations here. You know, we expect to win championships in every single one of our programs. We invest in them that way. And but in terms of the community, unbelievable community support, unbelievable passion. There are 3 colleges and universities within the Fargo-Moorhead area, all Division I, a Division II, and a Division III. So it's a really vibrant community. Healthcare is huge here. Microsoft has one of their sites, one of their campus sites here, and a lot of businesses in industry are moving to Fargo. One, because of the community, and so you learn to get past the weather. You know, I've gotten used to the cold. Some of probably the nicest summers in anywhere I've ever lived. I lived in Texas, North Carolina, New York. Unbelievable summers, great lake country. And so it's if you haven't been to North Dakota, this is an open invite to come to a game in the Fargo Dome to anybody who listens. But certainly I encourage you to visit. It's an unbelievable place. You get out to the western part of the state, incredible landscape views, the Black Hills. I mean, just gorgeous, gorgeous country.
You know, it's funny that we talk so much about weather. Honestly, Matt, I mean, you're Nashville. I love Nashville, and I'm so glad to live here. But you know, late August, early September, the humidity is brutal, right? And then in the winter months, while we don't have like frigid temperatures, a lot of times the gray skies and rain sometimes can get. So we spend an inordinate amount of time talking about weather. The reality is, it's about the people, it's about the place, it's about forming community and fitting in. And it sounds like Fargo is a wonderful place, and you and your family have certainly found a home there. And North Dakota State is lucky to have you. I just want to say thanks for coming on today. It's been a good conversation. You know, the collegiate landscape knows a lot about North Dakota State, primarily through the success of football program. But there's that, and there's a lot behind that, but there's so much more. And so just want to say thank you for spending some time with us today and sharing about your work there.
No, Mike, this is great. I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. I've enjoyed listening to these with some other ADs that you've had on, and so hopefully people can take some information from this. But thanks so much for having me on.
It's been a pleasure. So you've been listening to Matt Larsen, who's the Director of Athletics at North Dakota State University, your national champions in the FCS level this year. I appreciate Matt and his time with us, and thank you for listening to From the Chair. Hope you'll continue to do so by watching it on video on YouTube or wherever you get your audio version of podcast across the spectrum. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.